The grand palace stood tall in the heart of the alien empire, a testament to centuries of power and influence. It gleamed under the twin suns of the distant galaxy, its towers stretching high into the sky, reaching for the stars that surrounded it. Inside, the corridors echoed with the sounds of footsteps, the whispers of the courtiers, and the hum of endless political discussions. But despite all the noise, one person remained silent: Queen Lyra, the ruler of this mighty empire. Queen Lyra had always been a woman of strength and resolve. Her beauty was undeniable, her presence commanding, and her intelligence unmatched. But it was her refusal to marry that had made her a subject of endless gossip throughout the galaxy. For years, noble families from across the empire had presented their sons, each one eager to claim her hand in marriage, hoping to gain political power through the union. Yet, time and time again, Lyra had refused them all. She wasn't interested in alliances or the manipulation that came with them. She had spent her life building her empire, her legacy, and she knew that a marriage could change everything. It wasn't just a personal decision for her. It was a matter of the future of her people. She had to be careful. She had to be smart. And she had to think beyond her own desires. A marriage could lead to the destruction of everything she had worked for, and she wasn't willing to risk that. Yet, despite her strength, the pressure was growing. Whispers in the court became louder, and the pressure from the noble families intensified. The council, a group of influential leaders who advised the queen, was becoming more and more insistent. They argued that the queen's refusal to marry was weakening her position, that she was making herself vulnerable to attack, and that the empire needed a king to help guide it forward. But Lyra would not bend. She refused to be swayed by the voices of others, no matter how powerful they were. She would rule alone if she had to. She had always believed that power came from within, not from the people around you. And as long as she remained in control, the empire would thrive. One day, a new arrival entered the palace, a human envoy sent by the Earth government to establish a diplomatic relationship with the alien empire. His name was Marcus, a mechanic by trade, sent to offer his skills in repairing the Empire's starships. He wasn't a noble, wasn't a prince or a high-ranking officer. He was just a man, a simple human with no political connections and no desire for power. He came to fix ships, not to win hearts. Lyra had heard of him, of course. The council had spoken highly of him, praising his skills and his ingenuity. But she hadn't paid much attention. She had little interest in the arrival of a mechanic. To her, it was just another mission, another task, for the Empire's benefit. Yet, when Marcus arrived at the palace and was brought before her, she couldn't help but notice something different about him. His eyes were clear, his expression sincere, and there was a calmness about him that she had not expected. He didn't speak with the arrogance of the noble suitors who had tried to win her favor. He didn't bow and scrape, hoping to earn her approval. He simply stood there, quietly, waiting for her to speak. And when she did speak, it was not with the sharp edge of authority that she usually carried. Instead, it was with genuine curiosity. "You are the mechanic who has come to repair our ships?" she asked, her voice steady but not cold. Marcus nodded, his dark hair falling slightly over his forehead.
"Yes, Your Majesty. I've been sent to help with the repairs on your fleet. I'm no great lord, just a mechanic, but I've worked on ships all over the galaxy."
Lyra studied him for a moment, sensing there was something different about him. His words weren't laced with ambition or hidden meaning. There was no flattery, no desire for favor. He was simply there to do his job and nothing more. "I see," she said, her gaze softening slightly. "And do you think you can repair our fleet?" "I believe I can, Your Majesty," Marcus replied. "I've worked on ships of all kinds, from the smallest fighters to the largest warships. I'm confident I can help." There was a pause as Lyra considered his words. He spoke with such quiet certainty, as though he knew exactly what he was doing and believed in his ability to get the job done. It was refreshing, and in that moment, Lyra found herself intrigued.
"Very well," she said. "You may proceed."
But know this, Marcus. The ships you work on are the backbone of this empire. You will be expected to repair them quickly and efficiently. I understand, Your Majesty, Marcus answered. As he turned to leave, Lyra watched him walk away. There was something about the way he moved, his calm confidence, his straightforwardness, that left her unsettled. She had met many people in her lifetime, many who sought her favor for one reason or another. But Marcus was different. He wasn't trying to win her over, wasn't asking for anything. He was just doing his job. In the days that followed, Marcus worked tirelessly on the ships, fixing each one with a precision that impressed even the most experienced engineers in the Empire. He worked quietly, asking questions when necessary, but never overstepping his bounds. He didn't try to charm the courtiers or win favor from the nobles. He simply did what he had been sent to do. Lyra watched from afar, observing him as he moved about the palace grounds, his hands working on the intricate machinery of the starships. There was a calmness to him that was unlike anyone she had ever met. He wasn't drawn into the drama of the court, wasn't swayed by the opinions of others. He was focused, determined, and humble. As the days passed, Lyra found herself thinking about him more and more. She had always believed that her power lay in her ability to remain detached from personal matters. But with Marcus, she felt a strange pull, a connection she couldn't explain. It wasn't the kind of connection she had felt with the noble suitors, who only wanted to marry her for political gain. This was different. It was something deeper, something she had never expected to find. And yet, she fought against it. She couldn't allow herself to be distracted by a simple mechanic. She was the queen. She had a responsibility to her people, to her empire, and to the future of her galaxy. She couldn't let herself be swept away by something as trivial as feelings. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't push him out of her mind. There was something about him, something that made her feel like she wasn't just a queen, but a person. Someone who could connect with another on a deeper level. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years, and as she lay in her chambers that night, unable to sleep, the thought that kept repeating in her mind was simple. What if? In the days that followed, Marcus continued his work on the ships with an unmatched level of skill. His quiet presence in the palace became almost unnoticeable, a constant background to the bustling court and the endless discussions of politics. To the nobles and the courtiers, he was just a mechanic, a man from Earth who was here to do a job. But to Lyra, the queen, he was becoming something more, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She often found herself watching him from afar. Sometimes it was while he was working on the engines of the warships, his hands moving quickly and skillfully, fixing what had seemed broken beyond repair. Other times it was when he sat alone in the gardens, his gaze turned toward the distant stars, as if lost in thought. His calm demeanor, his focus on the task at hand, his simple way of being, something about him made Lyra feel things she had not felt in a long time. For years, she had been the ruler of the galaxy, a queen who had no equal. She had been the one in charge, the one who made decisions, who held the fate of millions in her hands. But here, in the presence of Marcus, she felt something different. It was a feeling she had avoided, a feeling she didn't know how to deal with. Vulnerability. She had spent so much of her life pushing away the idea of love, of companionship, because she couldn't afford the distractions. The empire came first. The people came first. But Marcus didn't want anything from her. He didn't ask for her attention, didn't try to impress her with grand gestures or empty words. He simply existed, quietly and calmly, and for some reason, that was all she needed. One afternoon, she decided to speak to him. She had been avoiding it for days, unsure of what she would say or how he would react. But something inside her urged her to act, to stop watching him from a distance and to finally confront the feelings she had been trying to ignore. She found him in the palace gardens, just as the sun began to set. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, the stars just beginning to appear in the twilight. He was sitting on a stone bench, his hands resting on his lap, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He didn't notice her approach until she was standing right beside him.
"You spend a lot of time out here," Lyra said, her voice soft but steady.
"Do you always watch the stars like this?" Marcus looked up, surprised to see her standing there. For a moment he said nothing, as if unsure how to respond. Then he smiled, a small, quiet smile that somehow made him seem even more human.
"I suppose I do," he said. "The stars remind me of home, I guess." "Home?" Lyra echoed, intrigued.
"What is it like, this home of yours?" He glanced at her, meeting her eyes for the first time in a way that felt different. "It's nothing like this," he said, his tone thoughtful.
"It's quiet, small. The sky is different."
The stars looked different, too. Lyra looked up at the stars, her gaze following his. She had seen them every day of her life, but now, in this moment, they seemed far away. Her home was here, in this palace, on this planet, ruling an empire that stretched across galaxies. Yet, for some reason, she felt the pull of the stars Marcus had just spoken of. She felt a strange longing, as though she was missing something. Something that, until now, she had never realized she wanted. "Do you miss it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your home?" Marcus was silent for a long time, his gaze never leaving the sky. "I do," he said finally. "But I also know that I can't go back. Not yet."
Lyra didn't press him for more details. She knew that there was a story behind his words, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to hear it.
Instead, she let the silence stretch between them, letting the quiet of the evening settle over them like a blanket. After a moment, Marcus spoke again. "You know," he said, turning slightly to face her, "I didn't expect to be here for long. I thought I'd fix the ships and be on my way. But it's strange being here in this place." "Strange?" Lyra asked, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "In what way?" Marcus paused, as if searching for the right words. "It's different from what I expected," he said. "There's a weight here, a pressure. But at the same time, there's a kind of peace. It's hard to explain. I've been to so many places, worked on so many ships, but none of them felt like this." Lyra's smile faded as she looked at him, trying to understand what he was saying. "And what about this place? This palace? The people here," Marcus shrugged slightly. "The palace is grand, I'll give you that," he said. "But it's more than that. It's the people. The way they look at you. Like you're untouchable." "Untouchable?" Lyra repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You think I'm untouchable?" He met her gaze, his expression sincere. "Not you," he said quietly, "but the people around you. The court, the nobles, they all seem so distant, like they are waiting for something, or someone, to change everything. It's like they see you as some kind of symbol, not as a person." Lyra's heart tightened at his words. She had known, of course, that the people saw her as a symbol. She was their queen, their ruler, the one they depended on to guide them. But hearing it from him, someone who had no reason to flatter her, someone who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, made it feel different. She wasn't just a queen to him. She was a person. "I don't think I'm untouchable," Lyra said softly, almost to herself. "But I've had to make myself that way. People like you, people who don't see me as a ruler, as a symbol, I don't know how to deal with that." Marcus smiled again, though it was tinged with sadness.
"You don't have to deal with it, Your Majesty," he said gently.
"You're a person, just like anyone else. And maybe that's what makes you different from all the others who've come before you." Lyra looked at him, her breath catching in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt seen, really seen. Not as the queen, not as the ruler of an empire, but as a woman. A person with her own hopes, her own fears, her own desires. She didn't know what to do with that feeling, but it was a feeling she couldn't ignore. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with you, Marcus," she said, her voice trembling slightly.
You don't follow the rules. You don't try to win my favor.
"You just exist, and it's confusing." Marcus's smile softened, and he reached out, placing a hand on the bench beside her. "I'm not trying to confuse you, Your Majesty. I'm just trying to help." Lyra looked at him, her heart racing in her chest. In that moment, everything felt different. The weight of her responsibilities, the expectations of her court. All of it seemed to fade away. All that mattered was the man sitting beside her, the man who had somehow managed to see her for who she truly was. For the first time in a long time, Lyra felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, there was something more to life than power, than politics, than the Empire. Maybe there was a chance for something real. But as the evening drew to a close, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the edge of something she didn't fully understand, and that terrified her. Days passed, and the feelings that Lyra had been trying so hard to ignore only grew stronger. Every time she saw Marcus, it was like a pull, a gentle tug inside her chest that made it hard to focus on anything else. It wasn't just his kindness, though. That was a big part of it. It wasn't just the way he made her feel like a person, not a ruler. It was the way he looked at her, as if he didn't see the queen, the woman with the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. He saw Lyra, the real person beneath the crown, beneath the throne. She couldn't understand it. She had never allowed herself to get close to anyone. Her position was too dangerous, too precarious for such things. She had always kept her distance, knowing that any weakness could be exploited. But with Marcus, it was different. She didn't feel weak around him. She didn't feel like a symbol. She felt free. And that scared her. One evening, after another long day of meetings and strategy sessions, Lyra found herself wandering the palace corridors. The weight of her responsibilities was heavier than ever. The council had been growing more insistent about her marriage, demanding that she choose a suitor, that she make a decision. They didn't care about her feelings. They only cared about the stability of the empire, the power of the throne. They didn't understand that she couldn't just choose someone for the sake of peace. It wasn't that simple for her. She paused outside one of the palace windows, her gaze drifting to the distant stars. They twinkled brightly in the dark sky, a reminder that there was more to the universe than the politics and power struggles that consumed her life. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she wasn't queen, where she wasn't constantly carrying the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. A life where she could be with someone like Marcus, someone who made her feel like she could breathe again. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned, and there he was, Marcus, walking toward her with that familiar, calm smile. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice soft, as if he didn't want to disturb the peace of the moment. Lyra forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Marcus," she replied, her voice more strained than she intended. "What brings you here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he said, stopping a few steps away from her. "I thought you might be busy with the council." "I was," she said, her eyes drifting back to the stars. "But sometimes the weight of it all gets to be too much." "You know how it is." He didn't answer immediately, as if he understood without needing her to say more. They stood in silence for a few moments, the cool night air drifting through the open window. Then Marcus took a step closer, his presence comforting in its simplicity. "You're not like them," he said quietly. "The nobles, the council."
You don't belong in that world.
Lyra looked at him, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you don't belong in a world where everyone's trying to use you," he said, his voice steady. "You're not just a pawn in some political game. You're more than that." Her heart skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever dared to see her for who she truly was. For so long, she had been just the queen, the ruler, the symbol of power. But Marcus didn't see her that way. He saw her as Lyra, a person, just like him. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "The Empire, the throne, the people, all of it feels like it's crushing me. I'm expected to be strong, to be unbreakable, but sometimes I just want to be normal, to not have to make every decision alone." Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped closer, placing a hand on the window frame beside her. "You don't have to be alone," he said gently. "Not if you don't want to be." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that it was possible to have someone by her side, someone who didn't want anything from her except her company. But the reality of her position, the dangers of opening up to someone, flooded her mind. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't have someone like you in my life. It's too dangerous. You don't know what it's like to have the entire galaxy depending on you. To have enemies watching your every move, waiting for you to slip."
I can't let anyone close.
Not like this. Marcus looked at her with soft, understanding eyes.
"I may not know what it's like to be a queen," he said, his voice quiet, "but I do know what it's like to be alone, to feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." "But that doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself?" Lyra turned away, her heart aching with emotions she didn't know how to deal with. She had spent so many years building walls around herself, convincing herself that she could do everything on her own. But Marcus was right. She didn't have to do it alone. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry the weight of the galaxy by herself. "You don't know what you're asking," she said, her voice shaking. "If I let you in, if I trust you, I could lose everything. The Empire, my people, my crown. It could all be destroyed." "I'm not asking you to give up everything," Marcus replied, his voice steady and calm.
I'm asking you to let me be there for you.
"Just for you, not for the Queen. Not for the Empire. Just for Lyra." His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. For the first time, she felt like someone saw her, not as a queen, not as a symbol, but as a person with flaws, with fears, with hopes, a person who needed someone by her side, not for what she represented, but for who she was. Lyra turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "I don't know if I can do this," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can let go of everything I've built." Marcus smiled, a warm, gentle smile that made her heart skip a beat. "You don't have to let go of anything, Lyra. You just have to let someone in. Let someone help you carry the weight. I'm not asking for your crown. I'm asking for you." For the first time in a long while, Lyra allowed herself to feel something other than the heavy burden of her position. She allowed herself to feel the possibility of something real, something she hadn't dared to dream of, a future where she wasn't just a queen, but a person who could love and be loved without fear. And in that moment, she knew that Marcus was right. She didn't have to do it all alone. She didn't have to carry the weight of the galaxy by herself. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone in. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Lyra's heart was heavy with the choices she had to make. Her mind raced, torn between her duty to her empire and the strange, unfamiliar pull she felt toward Marcus. She had never allowed herself to feel such emotions before. As a queen, she had always known that her heart had to remain locked away, shielded from the world. But Marcus had breached that wall, and now she found herself standing at a crossroads. It was early in the morning when she called for him. The sun had barely risen, and the sky was still bathed in soft hues of purple and pink. Lyra stood in front of the palace's large windows, gazing out at the sprawling city below. She had spent many nights looking out over this same view, contemplating her position, the weight of her responsibilities. But today felt different. Today she had made a decision. When Marcus arrived, he looked as calm and unassuming as always. He wasn't the same man who had first stepped foot in the palace. Now, there was something different about him. A quiet confidence had settled into him, something that made him seem even more grounded. He wasn't here to impress her. He wasn't here to win her over with flattery or grand gestures. He was simply here because he wanted to help. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes.
You wanted to see me. Lyra turned away from the window and faced him. Her heart was racing, and for a moment, she wasn't sure how to begin.
She had never been one to show vulnerability, but she knew that if she was to do this, if she was to take a step towards something more than just being a ruler, she needed to be honest.
Marcus, she began, her voice quiet but firm.
"I've been thinking about everything." He nodded but said nothing, waiting for her to continue. He knew better than to rush her. He understood the complexity of her position, but she could see it in his eyes. He was patient. He was willing to wait for her to figure out what she needed. "The truth is," Lyra said, taking a deep breath, "I've spent my entire life focused on the Empire, on the crown, on power. I've never allowed myself to think beyond that. I've always believed that being queen meant I had to be alone, that I couldn't afford to care about anyone. But the more I see you, the more I
don't know, Marcus. You've made me realize that I've been hiding from something important.
Oh. She paused, looking at him for the first time with vulnerability in her eyes. The vulnerability she had kept hidden for so long. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she whispered. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. For a moment, Marcus said nothing, but the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He understood, and he wasn't going to make her feel weak for feeling this way. He didn't see her as a queen in that moment. He saw her as a woman who was searching for something more. "Lyra, you don't have to be alone.
I'm here.
And I'm not going anywhere." The warmth in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt like she didn't have to carry the weight of the galaxy alone. She didn't have to be the queen who ruled from a distance, isolated, and removed from everything that mattered. She could be Lyra, and with Marcus by her side, she could be someone who wasn't defined by her title. "I don't know how this will work," she said, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know what it means for the Empire, for the people.
But I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pushing everyone away."
Marcus reached out and gently took her hand, his touch reassuring and steady. "We'll figure it out," he said. Together. For the first time in so long, Lyra allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there could be something more than duty and power. There could be love, there could be companionship, and perhaps, for the first time in her life, it was possible to be both a queen and a person. As they stood there hand in hand, Lyra's mind began to clear. She had made her decision. The weight of the crown, the expectations of the Empire would always be there. But now, she had someone who would stand with her. Someone who would be there for her, not because of her title, but because of who she was. In the days that followed, Lyra took steps toward a new future. The council continued to press her about marriage, about alliances, and the future of the Empire. But this time, Lyra stood firm. She would not be pressured into a union for the sake of power. She would choose a path that was right for her, a path that included Marcus. They would face the challenges together. She could feel the shift in the air. The Empire was not just about strength and power anymore. It was about the people, about building something meaningful that would last long after she was gone. Lyra was no longer just a queen. She was a woman who had found her voice, her partner, and a future that was hers to shape. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra and Marcus worked side by side, not just in the palace, but in the empire. The nobles, initially skeptical, began to see the strength in Lyra's decision. They saw her not as a ruler bound by tradition, but as a leader who understood the importance of partnership and trust. Slowly, they began to support her choices, understanding that she was making the decisions that were best for the future of the empire.
Lyra's heart swelled with pride as she looked around at the changes that were happening.
She had found something that so many others had only dreamed of. She had found love, yes, but more than that, she had found herself. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was truly living, not just for the empire, but for herself. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Lyra and Marcus stood together on the balcony, looking out over the vast expanse of their world. The stars were beginning to appear in the sky, each one a reminder of the vastness of the universe. Lyra looked at Marcus, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for being here, for being the person who saw me." Marcus smiled, his eyes soft and full of affection.
You didn't need to thank me, he said. You've always been someone worth seeing, Lyra.
I'm just glad I was the one who got to.
And in that moment, Lyra knew that no matter what the future held, she was ready for it. Together, they would face whatever came their way, no longer bound by duty alone, but united in something deeper, something more powerful.
And the galaxy, for all its vastness and its struggles, would be a better place because of it.